Well, today we're talking about the seesaw of empathy, and what spurred on this topic today. I just think it's a really fascinating topic, as you'll soon learn. But because a lot of coaches coach people who aren't them, and some of the time our clients are very similar to us in terms of backgrounds, but a lot of the times they're not. And how do you approach that? It doesn't mean that you can't coach them, but you do, I think, need to approach them differently. And so Len came up with the concept a while ago, a few months ago, I think. It was called the seesaw of empathy. And I thought it was such a brilliantly simple analogy. And then I started to go write that section in the book, and I was like, I don't know shit about fuck about this. And so I started asking Len a whole bunch of questions about it, about his experience with it. And he was answering me, but he wasn't giving me particularly good answers.
Right.
Because it was like a Facebook Messenger conversation. And I just said, how about we make this a topic on the podcast so that you can, and how about you like come with some stories and stuff like that, and I'll just ask you questions, and that way I can write this section of my book. And here we are. Thank you for being part of the process, dear listener. So Len, can you explain for me, please, what the seesaw of empathy is?
Yeah, in the short form of it, it's just the acknowledgement that if you don't have the experience that someone else is having, or you can't have the experience that someone else is having, at the very least, you need to be curious and empathetic to the experience that they're sharing, right? Like if I'll never know what, for example, I'll never know what it's like to give birth. And heck, I don't even have any kids, so I don't know what it's like to parent somebody. So I don't need to be going around telling people about their parenting skills or how they need to breathe during childbirth. As Jonathan already so eloquently quoted, I don't know shit about that, man. I've got no idea. And even the capacity to which I can learn about it through an intellectual lens is limited because I can't always deeply verify the source. And in our business, like one piece of science applied across a spectrum of humans be a totally different thing. So why not just not be a know-it-all? Don't be an ass. Is that a good description for you, John? I think I'm doing well so far.
I think you are. One thing that you hit on there that I want to make special note of is not only do you not deeply understand it, you can try to intellectually understand it, which I think is valuable, and I think that you should. And we'll talk about ways to basically enter in communities and enter in conversations that are happening to be able to understand it a little bit better. But you also have to appreciate that there is no way to have the capacity to deeply emotionally understand what they're going through. And I mean, the first step is just accepting that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a recent experience that perfectly illustrates this because when you've been coaching for a while and you've gotten pretty sort of adept at understanding research and understanding how to apply it, you find yourself in situations where you don't feel like you're in foreign land that much, right? Okay, that kind of makes sense. I kind of know that. Okay, I can see how that could happen. But I had an instance where, in my case, working with perimenopausal to postmenopausal women, right? I'm in that age range, not a woman, but I'm in that age range. So I read a book called Menopause Manifesto. It's by Dr. Jen Gunter.
Yeah.
Very clinical book. She's an obstetrician gynecologist, very clinical. Science I was happy to interpret, learn, and understand the science. The second book I read on the subject, I'm not writing a book.
Don't do it, man.
Right.
I'm just telling you right now.
Other than John's book right now, as I'm expressing this information that's going to find its way into it, other than that book, I'm not writing a secondary book. But the second book that I read was Dr. Stacy Sims' Next Level, right? Next Level by Dr. Stacy Sims, one of the foremost experts in athleticism in that time in a woman's life. I'm wrapping this up. So great book. It helped me understand how to apply the shifting of hormones to women in their athleticism, exercise, fueling, et cetera, et cetera. I was like, hey, this stuff makes sense. right?
Sure.
I'm PN level 2. I did some nutrition stuff. I get it. I'm a dude here. Like this dude's talking dude
But you
stuff.
still can't get it.
Still
right?
can't get it. Then here's my kicker, John. Then I read Menopocalypse by Amanda Thede.
I'm just picturing you. I'm picturing you on the subway on the bus.
No, John, I like to curl up in front of a portable fireplace with my smoking jacket as I listen to maybe some Barry White. A little, come on, baby, a little Barry White, maybe a little Peebo Bryson.
Portable
Maybe
fireplace.
yeah,
I'm intrigued by the detail that you decided to include.
It looks like a little square droid from Star Wars, and you plug it into a wall, and it glows orange in the center.
Hipsitosi's one.
Yeah, I may even listen to a little American Tale, a little Fivel somewhere out there. In any case, John, you're ruining my mood right now. In any case, so I'm reading Menopocalypse, and there's one section in this book where she talks about brain derived neurotropic factor BDNF and how that regulates your cognitive ability and how you lose that when you go through this process of life. And she's sitting with her son at a basketball game that her other son is playing in. Amanda Thebe, shout out to you, Amanda Thebe. And her son says, "Yeah, it's just like when I played basketball." And she had no recollection of him playing basketball. The second son, the one she's sitting with, as the first one sitting. And she said, at that moment, I was deathly afraid that I was headed head first for Alzheimer's. This is before she knew that she was perimenopausal. The 2 years of gunk that she dealt with before finally some OBGYN was like, "Oh yeah, it's just perimenopause. I can help you with that." Like she spent 2 years worth of testing. The way she chronicled that ordeal and the fear that she wrote that part of the book through of, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to be here and cognizant with my children. I feel like I had never interpreted the experience in any way other than clinical, other than scientific, right? And I had the opportunity to have a conversation with Amanda Thede, and I said, the way I look at those 3 books, number one, Dr. Jen Gunter, very clinical, Dr. Stacey Sims, very athletic, but your book was experiential. And it hit me in ways that I had not been hit before in the context of this. And I thank you for that book because it upped the level of empathy for me. Because for me, up to that point, it was just science. And to think that you're developing Alzheimer's, you know what I mean? When you have 2 young children, the way she described hating her husband at the time, because that hormonal shift can lead to depression and thinking that their marriage was over, how she yelled at her children frequently and felt horrible about it to the point where for a little while in the course of their relationship with their kids, she was just so ridden with so much guilt. I had never even thought about any of that. And that's sort of where that seesaw of empathy comes in, right? Because I can't experience it. And up until that point, I really didn't empathize with it. It was X's and O's to me, right? But having a greater amount of empathy allows me to deal with the clientele in a totally different way because I have an understanding of the fear, anger, the interaction with spouse, et cetera, et cetera.
So let's take a step back.
Let's do it. Moonwalk. Can we moonwalk backwards? Can we moonwalk?
You don't want to see me dance. I got one move.
What's your move? And please don't show.
It's not a good move. No, it's not a good move. But I think it's very important to have one good move that you can bust out if you ever find yourself in the middle of a dance circle.
You need one. You need one good move.
That's the rule. Yeah, you don't need more.
All right. You're not going to describe it in any way?
Because if you smile, then people don't know you're screwing up. People don't know how nervous you are. So you just smile.
This is true. You could be doing it on purpose.
It's the secret to dance,
It prevents them from thinking it's a seizure or convulsion.
So taking a step back,
we're back.
How did you? So, was there a moment when you were working with a client where you were like, I don't know shit about what this person is going through?
Absolutely.
Can you remember a moment where that happened? Can you tell me about that?
Absolutely. I was talking to a client about.
Give me a fake name. Fake names are what we do here.
Let's go with Luisa. Because I like Luisa.
Good name. Luisa, Luisa. Luisa.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Okay.
It's Eva's older sister, Luisa Longoria.
Okay.
I do last names with mine, John. I'm
Fancy.
I mean, I'm not
And
saying I'm
they
better.
alliterate. And
Yeah.
they alliterate.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm better. I'm
You're doing
just
great today.
I'm me, and you do what you do. In any case, so Luisa Longoria, having a conversation with her, and I said, yes, blah blah blah, Luisa, and that's why I specialize in working with females. And Luisa said, a female what?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh shit, something's happened here, hasn't it? You know that feeling
Knew that
when
was coming.
something happened, you're involved in it, and you don't know what it is. You don't know what you're directed.
Oh, I said something and I don't know what I said, but it's not gonna end up good.
Yeah. And she said a female what? And I was initially confused by the question, thought she was joking. I was like, that's so crazy, Luisa Longoria. I'm going to use the first and last name every time I reference her, by the way. And she said, female applies to the sex of an animal, maybe fauna, maybe flora, right? You mean a woman. And I was like, yeah, Luisa Longoria? Like I lost a few octaves on my voice. I went on Mariah Carey on her. I held my ear and everything. And that was my first understanding that I didn't understand fully, right?
Right.
Because up until that time, I'm flying by the seat of my pants, man. You know, I'm good at it. Ren, you're so good at interacting.
You knew academically how to build a workout. You had read a few books,
a few things at that point.
Training at the female a
right.
little bit.
Oh boy, Luisa Longoria is coming for you, buddy.
I'll tell you, these polyamorous female vegans going to Burning Man are just gonna hate us.
We've lost yet another group. All L alliteration women.
The female flora.
Oh my God.
I've just logged off the podcast. But you had academically known what to do.
Right.
And you thought you understood, but you didn't realize yet what you did not know.
Yes.
Until Luisa Longoria kind of put you in your place.
Yes.
And so what did you do then? So she said,
good question.
What kind of, she said, what did she say? What kind of female?
Yeah, female what?
What'd you do then? Yeah. So what did you do?
So here, immediately in that situation, I shut my yap and I listened and I said, thank you so much for teaching me that. Now I learned that in my house growing up with a grandmother, mother, and an older sister, right? You shut your yap and you thank them for the punishment that is doled out. That's how you survive, John. I'm all about surviving. And now I thrive, thanks to the online trainer academy. In any case,
when I go swimming, I make sure to dive.
Right.
Bees live in a hive.
They do. And
when
if you
I
listen
dance,
to the podcast,
to
please subscribe. So initially what I did is I shut my yap and I listened and I said, thank you for teaching me that, because now I don't have to make that mistake again. Secondary to that, though, this is where my strategy, for those that out there that aren't familiar, I was fortunate enough to be able to write an article for the Personal Trainer Development Center about niche, right? And part of that article, I talked about immersion in the population that you want to serve.
Okay, so I want to get to that, but I want to put a pin in that because that's going to be a big part of that's going to talk about immersion and how you understand the difference between like females and women and how you, as somebody who is not that person, how you can begin to immerse yourself and still understand that you're never going to be that person. You're never going to truly understand, but you can begin to gain what you need for the empathy to balance out that seesaw. But before we get to that, I want to talk about the listening bit because I think that that's valuable. Everybody talks about how you should listen more and talk less, but few people I've ever heard really give like a very good framework for it. And I think the first step is of course to just mute your mouth. But
yes, what did Amber say about your mouth? Shut your mouth hole or what? It was so good. I can't remember exactly what she doesn't know, but it was. I listened to it in the one of the previous podcasts. Gosh, I'll never remember that now. I'm so upset.
You know how I know we're doing a good job with this podcast? You and I recorded like 100+ episodes of the previous podcast, and I don't think you listened back to a single one of them. You're like, I'm done with that shit. I'm never listening to that again.
I usually run from it.
Yeah, was now, I mean, you're just, it's purely masturbatory on your end.
Pretty much.
You're just listening back. You're like, oh, I did a good job on that one.
Exactly what's happening.
Hey, everybody, look! I'm doing a podcast. It's on your dating Tinder profile. You just have like you have that. You
Oh
have
my
a
God.
podcast on the thing.
I feel so
but listen,
seen right now.
I know. I put your guys' name on the website as co-host.
Well, thank you, John.
Yeah, we could put them on the Spotify
honored.
thing too. We can put your names as the co-host if you wanted. Listening.
Like, yeah, right. That's my dream. Thanks, John.
The section on this in the book. Well, Amber did go on a date with somebody one time. I remember this a while back. So some guy who probably operated some heavy vehicle.
Who knows? Who knows?
Which is
Submarine driver.
It's probably one of those in there.
But she did tell me that he came to the date one time. He was like, "You didn't tell me you were famous." She's like, "What?"
Yeah.
He like pulls out the podcast thing.
Oh my God.
Yeah, getting Googled is a little scary for dates. I do use our GIFs. Like occasionally I'll use one of my own GIFs to see if they'll notice, just because it's kind of funny for me. It's like,
That's
wait,
awesome.
is that you? I guess.
Our GIFs that have 125 million views. Yeah. So the section in the book is called Listening Better, or How to Both Mute and Use Your Mouth.
Right.
And it starts with a quote that I just loved by this guy named Scott Peck, who's like some literary guy in American literature. And he says, "You cannot truly listen to anyone and do anything else at the same time." And I love that because it's so simple and eloquent and true. If you're truly listening to somebody, truly listening, you're not thinking about your response. You're not doing anything else other than listening to them. And I also think that the majority of people, unfortunately, in this world have actually never been truly listened to. And when they do, I mean, when you told me on your calls, often you'll have women.
It's shocking.
Who you're speaking to, and they'll say, "I feel like you're the first person who's ever listened to me."
Right.
And so I mentioned his name before, but I really think his work is worth looking into. Julian Treasure has an acronym, and it's called RASA, RASA. And it's just an acronym for listening. And so the acronym is receive, appreciate, summarize, and ask. So when you are receiving, it means you're facing them. It means you're maintaining eye contact. Yes. It means you're giving them your full attention. One of the things that Treasure says is it's rare to listen to somebody in totality. And he continued on to say, giving somebody your full attention is the greatest gift you can give to another person. And I just thought that was really well said. But then as they're speaking, it's important to appreciate it. And one of the things that you guys, particularly you, and because Amber, you keep yourself muted a lot because of the dogs and stuff, but one of the things that I really appreciate on the podcast with you, as I'm going on my long monologues, is the appreciation that you give when I'm speaking. It helps so much. It's things like little affirmatory nods and actions and noises, exactly like that. Little head nod, little eyebrow raise, little smile, little yeah. Oh, cool. Oh, really? Oh, wow. Like you're not asking anything. You're just appreciating. I mean, you don't need to be like stupid about it, but when you're listening, so receive, obviously, like full attention, eyes, right, and then appreciation, little notes, and then there's kind of a magical little word that you use for summarize, and that word is so, S-O. And the beautiful thing with the word so is a transition word that cuts off a piece of a conversation and begins to continue it on and proceed that conversation. So what you're telling me is, boom. So if I'm hearing you correctly then,
yes.
And so one of the things that the reason that I'm bringing this up, Ren, is when Louisa Longoria kind of put you in your place, you didn't have some ego reaction and challenged her, and you're like, "Well, I mean, that's stupid. You're being stupid. You're just being a female." No, what you did is Amber's writing her letter of resignation right now.
She got real stabby right there.
She got real stabby. Why do you think I only hire remote workers.
Right.
But the what you did is you stopped
Right.
and you followed this formula, right? You listened deeply, and then you summarized for her. You made sure that you understood it, right? And I don't know if you
Yes.
used this exact phrasing,
Probably not.
but you summarized, and then you started to ask questions,
Yes.
right? So the last one is, receive, appreciate, summarize. So what you're saying is
Mm-hmm.
ask another question. And the best questions to ask generally are very open-ended questions. Like, think about the difference in information that you're going to get between asking somebody, did you have eggs for breakfast, versus what did you have for breakfast?
Right.
And that's just the difference between a closed and an open question. You can have that. And so, as you already know, listening to this podcast, I love questions. Love
Yes.
questions.
Yes.
And so, in general, like who, what, where, why, when questions work well. Like, why is that? Can you remember a time when you felt that way? Oh, was there anybody else there with you? And then another trick that I really like to use, and this isn't anything that Julian Treasure says, this is just a trick that I really love to use, is I try to do, I mean, similar to what I kind of did with you, Ren, just now, which is like, can you tell me about one moment?
Mm-hmm.
And try to get them to visualize one moment. Or when I'm coaching coaches and trainers, and they're like, oh, I'm frustrated because my content isn't converting. I'm like, oh, have you ever gotten a client from content? No. Oh, where have all your clients come from? Oh, referrals and recommendations.
Right.
Okay, cool. So you have this one thing that you're spending all your time on that you're super frustrated by that has quite literally never worked. Like actually never worked to get you a client. And then you have this other thing that has always worked that you're putting no time and attention on. So let's, like, first of all, shift your focus to the thing that's already worked and just do more of what already works.
Yes.
But also, can you remember a very specific time? Like, if I were to say to you, it's like, oh, if every client was that client, my life would be amazing. Like, tell me about that person. And then they'll tell me about it, and then we'll go deeper. And the way that I love to go deeper is I try to ask very specific, like almost scene questions that vividly take them back to that moment in time to help them paint the picture in their mind. So I'll ask them what the weather was like. I'll ask them whether music was playing. I'll ask them whether they had anything to eat. I'll ask them what color shirt they were wearing. And I don't care what color shirt they were wearing. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get them to place themselves back in that moment, because what happens is all of these other memories start coming up when you do that. So I call those kind of picture painting questions. And so that's really effective when you're trying to learn and empathize with somebody. Try to really get yourself in their world and ask them these questions. I find works really, really well. But back to Seesaw of Empathy, because I want to learn from you, Ren, then what you did next once Louisa Longoria told you that a female is very different from a woman, which thank you for letting me know that. Now I know. And so Amber is so stabby.
Very stabby right now.
Yeah. But do you remember the episode where you guys explained to me what gaslighting was? That was fun.
Yeah.
Vaguely.
There's certain things that I can't ask publicly. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just so beyond. It's so beyond that moment in time that if you don't know it, you just can't ask about it anymore. Yeah. This reminds me of that.
Well, fortunately,
so
you're
me
not a
you
gaslighter, John. You don't gaslight people, and you don't receive gas. So that's a good. It's admirable that you're.
I receive lots of gas. Okay, my family is a farty family. My wife wrote a book about poo.
Well, that's because of all the vegetables. It's good for you.
No, it's because of all the dairy, my friend. Okay, so what did you do? What did you do after Louise Longoria put you in your place to begin to even out that seesaw of empathy? She told you, she made you realize that you understand academically the people you're training, but you don't understand the people you're training?
Yes,
What'd
yes,
you do next?
absolutely. So I dove into the language, right? I dove into listening to more people in shorter spurts of time because I can't have a conversation with everyone at once, right? And if you're going to have a deep level of empathy, I think that you need a broad spectrum of information, right? Uh, from whatever community, whatever type of person you want to develop empathy for, you got to listen to some stuff. Um, you've got to observe. It's not asking; it's observing. It's the Richard Attenborough, well, observing the women in their natural habitat. Like you got to get to that point. And for me, it's really easy because I'm on the
Did
internet.
you just say that Richard Attenborough observes women in their natural habitat?
I doubt that he does, but you've got to be a conservationist of sorts, John.
Let's just stop and picture that for a moment.
You've
Of
gotta-
just Richard Attenborough just in
cannot
the
picture
top
that.
of a condo in Miami with binoculars as
Yeah,
like the
I
creepy old
refuse to-
man, like watching the beach.
But
I'd prefer the guy from Australia that I can't think of his name right now. That's another fun one.
you're talking about
Steve Irwin.
Yeah, Steve Irwin.
Yeah,
Crikey.
that would
There's
be
a girl in a
entertaining.
natural habitat. Let's
I'd
go
watch
have
that.
a look. But in any case,
He's just got this like scraggly beard.
A fun fact.
This like white tank top on. Hasn't showered in a week.
I didn't realize that Richard Attenborough and David Attenborough from Jurassic Park were brothers. Did you guys know that?
I thought
Like
they were
Professor
the same person.
Hammond from Jurassic Park, that's David Attenborough. That's Richard Attenborough's brother. Never knew that.
That's a thing.
Fun fact.
Interesting.
Yeah,
cool.
see, there you go. Have that podcast.
Now
You
I
learned
know
all
that,
kinds
and-
of things.
Now next time I play Trivial Pursuit, I got that one.
Yeah, you got that one on lock, John. So, but really, I had to get into a place where I started to observe more. I ran into two different other humans that helped me along with this. One was our friend Molly, Girls Gone Strong. I started taking that certification, and right in the front of that certification, there's a concept called cultural humility, which is along the same lines of the seesaw of empathy. And it's just understanding that if you are outside of a culture, that you need to approach that culture with humility when you interact with them. And the other thing that I ran into was Catalina on our other podcast. And there was an episode where she uttered the phrase, nothing about us without us, right? And that was really informative for me too, because I realized
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so
translate that for me.
Yeah, so that
Nothing.
just
Say it again. Nothing about us,
without us. Yeah. Okay. So, for instance, I can't go along making all of these statements, content, assumptions about women, and never having interacted with women to find out whether or not the way that I'm speaking about them even actually reflects them, right? So nothing about us without us. This happens a lot in the context of the wellness industry, right? We assume things about people that we don't really ever interact with, and we create an entire narrative about what they're like or what they're not like in the absence of ever having a conversation with them. So those two things caused me to go into immersion, right? And like I said, fortunately, I'm on a social media platform. There are plenty of places, whether it be reading books. I start reading things like Menopause Manifesto and the Vagina Bible by Dr. Jen Gunter. Just hearing what the language is. How does an expert who is a woman communicate the expertise to women? Like that's really great for informing me and notching up my empathy. I started following.
Let me pull out a point there before you
Go
continue
ahead.
that I think is really valuable that I don't want to miss. You put emphasis on not just the science of what to do, on the language behind communicating the science of what to do.
Yes. Because if I'm going to communicate this information and there's someone who knows the information absolutely better than I do, first of all, but is also a member of that community, why not go there to learn the pace, tone, specific wording used and duplicate that and speak in the same way? That's a big part of understanding how to do that. And then I went to spaces where women go, typically online, for just general lifestyle challenges, life coaching. So I followed Brene Brown, right? I followed Mel Robbins, and the other thing I did, I curtailed my social media, right? A lot of male voices I don't follow very much on social media. It doesn't help me. It doesn't help me stay immersed in the language and keep my finger on the pulse of the population that I'm serving. And when you're getting all that, it's like 2020 was for Black people, right? All in the United States, like all of a sudden, everybody's getting this deluge of information, and oh, it's really like this when I leave my house as a Black man, and it's really like that when I go play. And people are like, oh my gosh, I'm learning the language, I'm understanding better. And people started to empathize. Some of it was performative, admittedly, but you can't immerse yourself in language and culture authentically and not see your empathy levels rise, right? So
Right.
I wasn't even like trying to do anything at that point. It's just it's all around me. I've sort of curtailed any other type of influences that come at me daily. So it becomes more like any language, I guess. You get closer to fluent.
Well, it's
You're in
emotion.
Mexico. Yeah, you're in Mexico, John. So no matter how much, if you learn fluent Spanish, no matter how much fluent Spanish you learn, you'd never be mistaken for Mexican. It's impossible. You just
Yeah.
you can't learn it. You can't be born into it, no matter how much you externally try to learn it. So I feel fluent, but I understand that I'm still not native. And
What I like about what you're saying though is you're using social media, you're using the media that a lot of people complain about, and rightfully
yeah,
so. I'm one of them a lot of the time. But you're using it to largely listen, and you're figuring out how to make it work for you.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
And if you're listening to this, anybody's listening to this, and you don't know who the leaders are in your space, you probably should not be working in that space.
right. You
Like
better
if you
figure that
train
out.
women and you don't know who Brene Brown is, you should probably figure that out pretty quick. And not to say that you might decide that you fine, but I've never actually paid that much attention to what she says because it's not my interest and I don't train women. But
Right.
like if you are in a space with a certain type of clientele, I think it is very important and valuable to identify who the leaders are that have managed to really stand out
Mm-hmm.
and emotionally impact and move
Yes.
your clients, and ask your clients, be like, hey, who are some of your favorite people who you follow,
Mm-hmm.
like not fitness people, just people who you follow. And what you're doing, Ren, is you are often, I know this about you, you didn't mention it just now, but I know this from our previous conversations, you're looking at the comments.
Yeah.
You're not looking necessarily at what, we use Brittany Brown again, you're not looking necessarily what she says, you're looking at the comments, you're looking at people's responses, you're looking at their language,
Mm-hmm.
and where they
Language.
have energy, where they don't have energy.
Yes. Your
And
best language is in the comments.
yeah,
Pretty much every time.
and it's just immersion. You're not like sitting there like, oh, okay, she said this, I'm gonna take down this note.
Right.
You're letting it like settle,
Sink in.
right?
Spin that. Let the juice get all in it. I'm putting activator in the Jerry curl, Jonathan, because I just want my soul to glow. I want it to be oh so silky smooth. I want it to shine through. I just want to let my soul glow.
Yeah, when I wore a do-rag last time on my head.
Is that where it goes, John? Just
Yes.
going.
Don't ask any more questions.
We've used up all of John's good do-rag knowledge. You got a good sentence in there, buddy. Great job. I'm proud of you, man.
I need one sentence.
Way to go.
That's a good attaboy.
Yeah. I'm so encouraging. That's what people say to me. You're so encouraging. And I say, you're right.
So what are the take-home messages here with this seesaw of empathy concept? It's number one, just the awareness of the thing.
Yeah.
It's saying I am like the people I train, or I am not like the people I train, and
Right.
wherever I lie on that spectrum is totally fine. But it means that there are different actions and levels of understanding that I need to go out and acquire, and that goes well beyond the academic understanding of how to get somebody a transformation. Right? Is that number one?
True. Yeah, that's number. But before you get to number two, I want to say something because I know you're wrapping up. Oftentimes, when you do this, you'll find yourself in positions where you are academically more knowledgeable than the population that you're serving, because women don't have to study how to be women, right? In that case, you know, they because they feel it, they get to live it, right? And I often get this comment, and I'm not being facetious in any way when I say this, and I'm certainly not trying to pretend to be something that I'm not. But a comment that I often get is, "My gosh, Ren, you know more about women's bodies than women know about women's bodies," because the academic study combined with the empathy, the understanding, the immersion, that's the thing that takes you over the top. They don't expect you to be efficient at the language and the tone, and also have the academic part. So, you know, much in the same way that I know scholars who are non-Black people who have great insight on African American history. Like, I don't study it because I have the experience of being in the country. It's very easy for someone who is not a Black person to give me insight that I've never considered and or information I've never heard. So it can be an advantage in that way too. And I'll let you finish, John.
I love that point. So I'm happy you made it. I also think it's really valuable just to ask people what it's like living life as them.
Yes.
And ask them from a state of curiosity. I mean, when you and I joke a lot, but you've also given me a lot of insights into what it's like living life in your shoes. I mean, I cannot even begin to understand what it's like to live life as a Black person.
Same in reverse. I can't imagine playing hockey for any reason, ever. But I empathize with it.
It just makes no sense. Why in the world would you do it?
I don't want to do that. But I like that your field hockey stick had a name. It's Excalibur. That's interesting to me. I feel immersed in your world.
Yeah, that was ball hockey.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't know this. I thought it was all the same.
I think, I mean, obviously you want to have a bit of a trust relationship with somebody, but you can ask them questions.
Right.
Like, it's allowed. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure a ton about my family. It doesn't really matter. Not that I don't want to. It just doesn't come up. But I mean, my oldest brother is gay. He's married to a man. They have a Black adopted daughter.
Right.
And the man that he's married to is Filipino. And I was at a drag show with my brother and his boyfriend at the time.
Great story.
And you know, it was just whatever. Drag shows are just fun to be at. Like, it was super fun. Also, by the way, if you're a straight guy, it is a fantastic place to meet women. I went with a girlfriend of my time at the time. Not Allison. This is before her. But and it was all like, women what are everywhere. They called? It was all like women getting married. It was all like bachelorette parties and stuff like that. Like, if you're like a straight guy, it's a great place to meet girls. Anyway.
Always cut to the core.
I asked him. John. Well, I asked him. I know. I was going to cut to. I asked him at the drag show. I was like, "So is this a turn on for you? I mean, is this
right?"
And he said, you know, for some people maybe. He says, not for me, but like, this is our culture. Like, this is culturally what we do. It's not. Maybe some people get turned on by it, but more than anything else, it's a way that we celebrate who we are.
Yes.
And I remember that story, not because also it just allows me to remember that drag show, which was just a particularly fun one. I've been to a whole bunch of drag shows and stuff, but that was just like a super fun one. But more, and like everybody would walk up to the drag queen, like put a $5 bill in their whatever.
Fives.
Skivvies. Can I call it skivvies?
I guess you can.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, this is something. This is a conversation we need to have, everybody. I feel like I don't understand the economics of it because, in all fairness, I've been to a strip club like twice in my life. But
right.
I feel like if you were a stripper, you should probably work in Canada because ain't nobody going to be throwing like loonies and toonies at you on stage. Right, you know what I'm saying? Right. They're going to be giving you paper money. Well, in Canada, the smallest bill is $5.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
In the US, you're getting ones.
Yeah, that's as a past and somewhat infrequent distributor of ones, I can corroborate this. This is that's my MO. I digress.
But show's gone off the rails. You'd feel like you needed to give fives. Okay, so thank you for listening to this episode of the Obvious Choice podcast. I like how we started about empathy and empathizing with people and about how important it is to respect them, and then ended up with stories about throwing money at strippers. That's the kind of podcast this is, everybody, and I really hope that you love it and that you have fun with us with it. If you are looking for another episode to listen to right now, I recommend episode 34. It's called Never Lose a Customer Again, or Never Lose a Client Again, Never Lose a Customer Again is the book it's based off of. Episode 34, Never Lose a Client Again. If you like this conversation, if you want a conversation that's more about coaching and client care and customer service, I think that you will really love that episode.
There's no stripper talk in that episode for the folks that are listening.
That's the only promise we'll make, though.
Right. That's all we can promise you. I hear the sound of my clients canceling. But no, I think
I hope that you have a good one. You take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.